So back to Lester and Joe. They had a little conversation about it, which you can see in full during the Super Bowl if you choose to watch. And as he has been doing lately, Joe Biden got a little testy. He really is kind of turning into the get off my lawn president. It wasn't a big deal this time, but he didn't like the question. Here it is.
I think it was back in July you said inflation was going to be temporary. I think a lot of Americans are wondering what your definition of temporary is.
Well, you're being a wise guy with me a little bit, and I understand that's your job. But look, at the time, what happened was let's look at the reason for the inflation. The reason for the inflation is the supply chains were cut off.
When can Americans expect some relief from this soaring inflation?
According to Nobel laureates, 14 of them that contacted me and a number of corporate leaders, it ought to be able to start to taper off as we go through this year.
Oh, my God, Dave. Do you feel better? Because the 14 Nobel laureates say ought to taper off. What? I mean, that's worse than just saying, I don't know when.
Yeah, well, that would be more honest, certainly. I like that he calls him a wise guy, like he's using insults out of the 1940s or something. It's just so bizarre. But look, how many of those 14 Nobel laureate economists saw the crash of 2008 coming? My guess would be zero of them. And I think that mainstream Keynesian economics is just so out of touch with reality at this point. And no, the supply chain did not cause the price inflation. The monetary inflation is what's led directly to the price inflation. And many of us, myself included, I was talking all about this on my podcast. You can find this during March of 2020 and April of 2020, that the idea that we would lock down the economy, print trillions of dollars, and distribute checks to people was guaranteeing that we were going to see price inflation coming in the next few years in a major way. And then every one of Biden's policies has just been to add to it. I mean, his energy policy, it's like, well, what do you think is going to happen here? You think this isn't going to make the cost of energy go up? So this is a very predictable consequence of what we've done over the last couple of years. And I agree with you that if you're going to kick people out of work, you kind of incur some obligation to pay them. But the answer to that, the best answer is don't kick them out of work.
Yes, exactly.
And this is, this is the bill is coming due. And when you talk about the government spending, I mean, look, obviously the Democrats shoulder a lot of the blame for this, but the Republicans cannot get off the hook. I mean, they railed against Obama for his spending. And in 2016, they took over control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they increased spending. And at that point, it was just like that was. And of course, George W. Bush did the same. He had the excuse, I guess, of 9/11. They have the excuse of COVID. Obama had the excuse of the Great Recession. Like, there's always an excuse for it. It's never going to be.
Trump was spending before he had the excuse of COVID.
That is very true. And so, yeah, it's like this is at some point there's going to become a real issue where the dollar is going to lose confidence, and which is the global reserve currency. This has huge ramifications. And the truth is that we cannot, we spend well beyond our means. And the only reason we're able to do it is because people are loaning the American government money. And if people stop doing that, then this whole thing, it's a game of musical chairs, and you do not want to be there when the music stops. So this is there's a reason why for so long in the history of this country we were on a gold standard, and we were really promoted the idea of some fiscal sanity. This is how nations collapse under fiscal conditions like this and monetary conditions like this.
What's been amazing to me is the inflation, it continues to rise. It's not going away. It wasn't transitory. All these lies get exposed. Now some in the left-wing press, which is, I repeat myself, they're playing dumb. Like, well, what else could President Obama have done? What would Trump have done differently? Chris Hayes had a tweet like that. I saw some from MSNBC sort of trying to run cover for Biden on this. Like, who could have seen it coming? And it's like, Well, to your point, your podcast back in the spring of 2020, there were so many pundits who pay attention to monetary policy, who didn't believe in this monetary policy lie that we could just spend into oblivion and never ever have it come back to haunt us. It's like it's like women being told they can have endless brownies and what red wine, and it's never going to show up in your belly. It's not true. It's not true, America. and we did see it coming.
Yeah, well, what's interesting too is that now, it's one of these things that people feel. Like you can't pretend it's not happening. I mean, like my wife talks to me about it all the time, but she does she knows everything. I'm an idiot in every single regard except this. Like I'm able to do this, and so, but everything else, my wife takes care of me. I'd be like naked and alone and afraid if it wasn't for her. But she'll be talking to me all the time, and she's like, "Hey, those organic strawberries? They were like $4, and now they're like $7.50. And this is like, the prices of everything are just going through the roof.
A used car right now. Forget that."
Yeah, I mean, and so people, and this is again back to kind of the thing we were talking about at the top of the show. Who does this really hurt? I mean, it's not as if like millionaires and billionaires, as Bernie Sanders likes to say, or just billionaires these days, but it's not as if they are really like, oh no, the cost of living went up a little bit. That's not, but for working class people, this absolutely destroys them. I mean, it's and so we have these policies supposedly in the name of, oh well, we have to cut these checks to help people out. And then the inflation ends up wiping away everything that they got and more. So it's very bad for people in the middle or lower ends of the economy. And to see Joe Biden, I mean, he's clearly never even begun to think about monetary policy.
Well, that's why the wise guy comment is obnoxious, because it's like, no, you predicted this. You said this in July. It wasn't true. There are people whose ability to put food on their table depends upon these prices going back down, settling, right? Where's the accountability? He's saying, do you hold yourself accountable? And what can you tell these people? And he's so glib. He just blows it off like everything on him is a political hit job. Like, you're a wise guy, to your point about the 1940s, they're almost expecting like the fake punch, like, hey, Buster, right? It's like, no, this is serious. I mean, I've said this before, my mom is in this category. She's on a fixed income. She's 80. Of course, I help her out, so she's not in the same position that most are. But I understand she doesn't like to take my money, so she'd much rather do it with her own retirement, her own pension, her Social Security. She worked hard her whole life. She doesn't like taking from others. What choice does she and do the others have now with prices rising to this like 40-year record highs, and he's laughing it off like he's the victim attacked by, the evil Lester Holt?
Yeah, and of course, everybody around Joe Biden and everybody in the corporate press, I mean, none of them really are in that situation. I mean, wouldn't it kind of be interesting, almost like if you had one, like, I'm a pure capitalist, I have nothing against people making money, but wouldn't it be interesting if there was like one anchor of one show on cable news who like made $60,000 a year? Like maybe they'd want to talk about a lot of different issues. Well, yeah, right. But then like you might hear about a lot of different issues, and you do hear about different issues when you watch the local news. You hear a lot about like the crime that's going on up the block, or prices at the grocery store, because this is like these are people who actually live through the implications of these policies. And again, and I do think that this was true during the entire Obama administration and true during the entire Trump administration, is that they measure these things by like, well, I mean, the stock market's doing good. And even the unemployment numbers, I mean, are completely misleading. I mean, they don't count
they
people.
Are misleading.
They don't count people who have dropped out of looking for work, and they have no measure. Like if you're if you're an executive and you lose your job and then you get a job at Starbucks, there's no change in the unemployment numbers, but like there's a pretty profound change in that person's life.
Like, I created 7 million jobs. It's like what you did was just replace the jobs. Like those are people who were pushed out of the workforce during the COVID lockdowns who are now working again. That you didn't create anything.
Right. And with the like 400,000 small businesses that close their doors for good, if those people go again and get some job, at a restaurant or something, it's okay. That's a new job created, but that's not exactly like the damage has been undone.
Hey, Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.